Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Nice to talk to you.
Same here. So you have some questions for your class?
Yeah. Um, so my first question was, how many times has the Sea Shepherd been to Puerto Vallarta? Do you know?
I think we've been there a couple of times over the last 40 years. We've gone into there a couple of times. Generally, we're operating out of San Felipe up in the Sea of Cortez. That's where the Vaquita campaign is happening. And also, we spend time in Mazatlan, and we've also been in where else have we been? I don't know, quite a few ports in Mexico, but we've been there in Puerto Vallarta a couple times.
Cool. And do you know how many times you've been here to Puerto Vallarta?
No, because we have so many vessels, I can't keep track of them all. There's 10 vessels, but we've been there 3 or 4 times, I would say.
I think she meant if you personally have ever been here.
Oh yeah, I've been there. I've been there on board the Sea Shepherd, or on board the Parley Moet, actually, quite a few years ago.
Do you know the latest update on the Vaquitas?
Well, right now the season for the Totoaba is almost over, so we can't go. We have to go to Mazatlan because we can't get fuel because of the quarantine. But there's between 17 and 22 Vaquita left. And I'm quite confident that if we hadn't been there for the last 6 years, they would now be gone. We've confiscated about 120,000 meters of nets. That's about over 1,000 nets that we've taken from the Vaquita refuge and destroyed. So, and we'll be returning again after this season. So it's an ongoing thing. As long as the Vaquita are there, we're going to be there protecting them.
Wow. Let's see. How do you stop the whalers? I've been watching Whale Wars on my computer here, and I've been watching like every single episode. Do you know, like, how do you stop them?
Well, the best tactic is to prevent them from loading whales after they kill them. If they can't load the dead whales, they can't go after the live ones. And so that's the most effective tactic. And also the other thing is to try and prevent them from refueling down in the Southern Ocean. So those interceptions and blockades worked every year. Sometimes they took only 30% of their quota. One year, only 10%. But now, after every year of going after them, we cost them about $150 million in losses, and we saved about 6,500 whales. What happened is that they've now retreated permanently from the Southern Ocean. So the Southern Ocean Whale Sanctuary is now absolutely a sanctuary. And this year is really good for whales because it's the first year ever that there's been no whaling in international waters. All whaling now is restricted to the waters of Japan, Norway, Iceland, and Denmark. And Norway is now the #1 whaling nation. Japan's #2. So over the last 40 years, I would say that we reduced whaling by about 95% from what it was in the 70s to what it is now. So I'm quite convinced that even the whaling in their waters will die out within the next 5 years.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
So how many times do you think you've been around the world?
Oh, quite a few times. I don't know. I haven't really counted that, I've sailing for 50 years. So across the Pacific and the Atlantic, and then been to the Southern Ocean, pretty much everywhere, the Mediterranean, the Caribbean, and that. So, but I've never really taken into account how many times I've been around the world.
Now I'm going to start going into the shark questions. What role do sharks play in the ocean? I know myself, but I want to hear in your words. What do you think?
Well, sharks have been around for about 450 million years. And so as an apex predator, what they do is they actually mold evolution. So every fish in the ocean, its color, its behavior, its speed has been influenced by the shark as the apex predator. And therefore it maintains a level of diversity and biodiversity within the ocean. So it's very important. When you remove a shark from an ecosystem, there's quite a few negative consequences that result. And for instance, a good example is La Reunion Island in the Indian Ocean. What they do there is they kill the sharks because they want to protect the beaches for the surfers. But in fact, that makes it more dangerous. And the three places in the world where shark attacks happen more are La Reunion Island, Queensland, and Western Australia. And the reason for that is all three places have these shark kill programs where they go out and kill the sharks. Now, what happens is that when they kill these sharks, say the bull sharks that they kill in La Reunion Island, it creates a vacuum which brings in more sharks from the outside. And because sharks are territorial, those new sharks are more aggressive. And so killing sharks only brings in more aggressive sharks. You're not going to, take out every shark in the ocean. And so the other thing that the sharks in La Reunion were doing, where they were keeping the reefs in La Reunion Island healthy. And as soon as they removed those sharks, then they began to have some serious problems with the health of the coral reefs.
Wow. That's interesting information we haven't heard before.
Is Sea Shepherd currently protecting sharks?
Yes, we're protecting sharks all over the world right now. We have anti-poaching patrols off of East and West Africa, off of Peru, in the waters of Ecuador, the Galapagos Islands, Colombia, in the Caribbean, in the Mediterranean. And so going after illegal fishing operations, our anti-poaching work, we saved literally thousands of sharks. We arrested one vessel in the Galapagos last year that had taken over 9,000 sharks, so we put it out of business. And I estimate the numbers that we've taken off of Africa has probably saved the lives of over 1 million sharks in the last couple of years.
Wow.
That's awesome.
I think you're getting more excited about this, aren't you?
Yeah, I was a little bit shy at first. But, what's the most vulnerable shark?
Oh, well, there's literally hundreds of species of sharks, so it's hard to say which ones. I mean, the great white shark is an endangered species. But, really, when you look at it, almost every fish in the ocean is endangered because we're overfishing the oceans. Bluefin tuna, for example, is extremely endangered. And so you have to look at it as a whole, not just this species or that species. And as a whole, the oceans are extremely overexploited right now. And that's a very serious thing because the ocean is a life support system for all life on the planet. It provides food, but it also produces oxygen. 70% of the oxygen that we breathe is produced by phytoplankton in the ocean. It also regulates and controls temperature and climate. So the solution to climate change is really a healthy ocean. And the reason that phytoplankton populations have been diminished since 1950 by about 40% is the fact that we're killing off the source of their nutrients. Now, the nutrients that phytoplankton require, and phytoplankton is probably one of the most important species on the planet. If phytoplankton goes extinct, we all die. Nobody lives on the planet without phytoplankton. But phytoplankton need to be fed, and the nutrients that they require are nitrogen and iron. And they get those nutrients from the feces of whales and marine mammals and seabirds. For example, every blue whale every day produces 3 tons of whale manure, which is heavily rich in nitrogen and iron, and that floats on the top and provides the surface, the food for the phytoplanktons. So when you lower blue whale and other whale populations, you're actually diminishing the food supply to the phytoplankton. And then the phytoplankton feeds the zooplankton feeds the fish and goes right up to the top. So what we have been doing for many years is exploiting life in the ocean without any understanding of the damage or the consequences that we're causing to the overall ecosystem.
Wow, that's extra information.
Yes, that was more than enough.
Wow.
Do you know what was your scariest mission?
Well, I never really look at the missions as being scary or anything. To me, the thing that's most scary, I suppose, would be what we're doing to the oceans. That's if the ocean dies, we all die. So that's the thing that I'm most afraid of. But I've been doing what I've been doing for many years, so quite used to it. It's sort of routine. So the risks are all very routine. When we ask people when they join the ship, I said, "Are you prepared to risk your life to protect a whale?" And if they say they're not, then we don't want them. And people say, "Well, that's asking an awful lot from people. Risk your life to protect a whale." But we ask young people to risk their lives to defend the flag or to defend an oil well or to defend real estate. I think it's a far more noble thing to risk your life to protect an endangered species or a threatened habitat. So it's only because our values are very anthropocentric. That is, everything revolves around us, and that's what's important. But the reality is that we have to live in a biocentric world where we're interdependent with all other species. We need them. In fact, they're more important than we are. Like once I was criticized because I said birds and trees and plankton and worms are more important than people. And somebody said, how could you say something so outrageous? I said, well, because it's true. Birds and worms and bees and trees and plankton can survive quite well without us, but we can't live without them. So ecologically, that makes them more important than we are. And we have to live in harmony with all other species, or else we're not going to survive as a species ourselves. Right now, for instance, you're seeing this coronavirus. Now, what's causing that, and it's going to be more of this in the future, is when you destroy habitats and you diminish species. Excuse me, I got to sneeze. 1 second. Excuse me.
Bless you.
When you destroy habitats and you diminish species, you create a situation which is called zoonotic transmission. Now, how many viruses do you think there are in the world? To give an example, if you think about it, how many viruses?
I don't know. A lot of them.
Hundreds of millions. There are more species or types of viruses than there are animals. And the reason for that is every animal and plant has a virus or a group of viruses that are associated with that particular species. And they're very important. Viruses help us to fight off pathogens in our bodies. They help control, sequester carbon in the ocean. So viruses perform a very important function. And except when they are forced into a transmission, which is jumping from one species to another species. And that happens when we destroy habitats and we diminish species. So the virus is now looking for a new host. Now, the virus doesn't want to kill its host, but it takes quite a few years to coexist, to develop a way of living with that new host. And in the process, many of the hosts die. So that's why, for instance, we had a lot of seals dying off in the North Atlantic and the Caspian Sea because of canine distemper, which was a virus from dogs that got into seals and killed off literally tens of thousands of seals. We're dealing with the same thing up in with domestic salmon, because salmon farms transmit viruses to wild salmon populations, and they have no protection, and so you have big die-offs of these animals. When you have an overpopulation of viruses in the ocean, for instance, in algae, then you have red tide, which is very destructive. When you have an overpopulation of viruses in, say, plant world, then you have viruses that kill off the plants and that. So it's really, we're the cause. This particular disease is actually, we caused it, really, is what I'm trying to say. We caused it, and we're going to cause more unless we learn to live in harmony with all other species and protect biodiversity. Because there's three basic laws of ecology. The first is the law of diversity. The strength of an ecosystem lies in diversity. The second, the law of interdependence. Every species needs every other species. And third, the law of finite resources, that there's a limit to growth, a limit to carrying capacity. And when we take the carrying capacity, literally steal the carrying capacity from other species, it causes their numbers to be diminished. And that causes interdependence to be diminished. And that's the cause of all of these ecological problems. No species can survive on the planet outside of those three basic laws of ecology. If they do, then their days are numbered.
Captain, I have had experience here in Puerto Vallarta with the red tide. It's not every year that it happens, and I'm a diver, and I've never heard anybody give me any details about what it causes or what how it occurs and what is it doing when it's here?
Well, over like 50 years ago, red tide was very rare, and now it's very common. Right off of Florida, almost every year we have it. Well, the reason for that is the particular algae species are receiving megadoses of nutrients, primarily from agricultural runoff. Phosphates, all different things that are going into the environment, which causes a very sudden population explosion amongst that algae species. And that in turn motivates a viral response, which kills off the algae. But as the algae are dying, they kill off other things too.
Okay. Has there ever been any correlation with any kind of mass species die off with red tide?
Well, yeah, they kill off entire populations of fish. Also, marine mammals are affected. So yeah, anything that consumes the algae that in a red tide situation, well, basically they're consuming poison.
Okay. And so is it safe for us to dive and swim in that?
Not really. I wouldn't do it.
Well, we've never stopped that before. Okay. Next, if you want to go on, Sarah, I'm sorry for hijacking your interview.
I guess you could probably dive as long as you make sure that you don't ingest any of the water.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be bad for you.
I'm half mutant now, probably.
When were you last at sea with Sea Shepherd?
When was I last one?
At sea with Sea Shepherd.
I haven't been at sea for a couple of years, and the reason being is that because of our interference with Japanese whaling, Japan had me placed on the Interpol Red List. The Interpol Red List is for criminals who are major traffickers, mass murderers, war criminals. I'm the only person in history to ever be put on that list for conspiracy to trespass on a whaling ship. But that shows you the economic and political power of Japan. I was also on there by Costa Rica, but they had a change of government. And as soon as they had the change of government, they dismissed the charges against me, which shows you how political it was. Because if it was actually a criminal thing, they couldn't do that. But so it was politically motivated. So we have 12 ships at sea and about 250 volunteers. So I coordinate the operations, although I'm not on the ships myself. I actually can't leave the U.S. I could go to Europe. I could go to France. I have no problem going to France, but I couldn't then come back to the U.S. because I would be arrested in the United States and sent to Japan. And even though I'm a Canadian citizen also, I can't go to Canada without being arrested and being sent to Japan because we cost them like $150 million in damages, so they want their revenge.
Oh boy.
So, that one?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think I know that answer. Captain, what's your favorite thing about the ocean? Everything.
The thing about the ocean is the understanding that it is our life support system and that we need it if we're going to survive. The best way to explain what it is if you consider the Earth to be a spaceship, which is what it is. The Earth is on this trip around the Milky Way galaxy, traveling at a tremendous speed. But despite that, it takes 250 million years to do one revolution of the Milky Way galaxy. And every spaceship needs a life support system. And that life support system provides the air we breathe, provides food, and regulates temperature and climate. And that's what diversity in the ocean does. It is the life support system. And it's run by crew members. And the problem is we're killing off the crew members. We human beings, we're just passengers on this spaceship. We're having a great time amusing ourselves, but we're killing crew members. And there's only so many crew members you can kill before the machinery begins to break down. And those crew members are the fish and the worms and the plankton and the trees and all of those species that make it possible for everything to run perfectly within that life support system. And if we don't take care of the crew, then the crew is not going to be able to take care of the life support system for all of us.
What is the most interesting or valuable piece of wisdom you've learned from your experience?
Well, I think the thing that I learned that was most valuable to me is way back in 1973. I served as a medic for the American Indian movement during the occupation of Wounded Knee in South Dakota. And we were surrounded by 3,000 federal troops that were shooting at us. We had no hope of winning. So I went to Russell Means, who was the leader of the American Indian movement. I said, Russell, we can't win. The odds are against us. So why are we here? And he told me something that stayed with me for the rest of my life. He said, well, we're not concerned about the odds against us. We're not concerned about winning or losing. We're here because this is the right place to be, the right time to do it, and the right thing to do. Don't worry about the future. Concentrate on what you're doing in the present. that will define the future. So that's what we try to do with Sea Shepherd. We work in the present to ensure that we have a future, but we're not concerned about the odds against us, and so we take on campaigns where there's no way of winning, and miraculously we win, because I believe that all these things can be changed through a combination of passion, courage, and imagination. If you have those three virtues, you can change the world.
What's your minimum age to join Sea Shepherd? And
there's
how?
No minimum age, but there is a minimum age to join the ships, which is 18. But being involved with Sea Shepherd, there's no minimum age.
How do you prepare? What would you suggest to her? What are some skills? What are some specific aspects of education that she should put her mind to if she had that goal?
Well, the things that are most practical about this, first of all, that we look for people who are passionate about what they're doing. That's what we want. But as far as skills are concerned, there's navigation, there's engineering, there's cooking, there's medical, knowledge, electricians, anything that you can do on a ship, really. So all of those things are very, very important. So, and then of course there's biology, marine biology, and that's. But I always tell people just to follow their passions. What do you want to do? What are your skills? What is
now?
Yeah, when we saw the
Bridget Bardot,
we were like, we wanted to go on it so bad.
Certainly can study for any of those skills, and also if you wanted to organize a Sea Shepherd group, a children's group, or anything, and doing what you're doing right now, which is doing an educational project for your school. So, just go with it, whatever ideas that you have, and build on them.
Yeah. So you don't have any specific kids divisions that do any kind of campaign?
We did it one time, but this is something you can organize if you're interested in doing it.
Voila, Sea Shepherd Kids. It doesn't really exist anymore. Or does it?
Not really.
Not really?
Again, we leave it up to people to use their initiative to get these things going.
Really?
Sea Shepherd's not really an organization. We're more of a movement. We're in 42 different countries. They're all separate entities, and so there's nobody there saying, "Well, you got to do this way," or fall in line and follow these rules.
Wow. Well, we're so honored to take this time and have this time to chat with you. If your crew is doing any tours, please let us know.
Okay. As soon as the quarantine thing is lifted, I'm sure that'll be okay.
So are they planning to stay for a little while?
Right now, there's no plans to move anywhere yet, so we'll see. The boat was supposed to. The boat was supposed to do.
Are stopped because of the virus?
Yeah, the boat was supposed to do patrols in the waters off of Peru and Colombia and Ecuador, but right now they're just waiting.
Okay, that's awesome. Maybe you will get on there. Thank you again for your time. She is going to share this with her class. It's a little alternative school.
Well, I hope the students at the school like it.
I think they're going to be so excited. So excited. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye for now then.
Bye.
Take care.